I should really start off by singing that Bachman Turner song that you ain't seen nothing yet, but everyone who's heard me sing advises me not to do that. So what I want to do today is I want to not tell you about the future. I want to talk to you about what might be possible in the future and give you my view of what the future might look like. But to do that, really you've got to go backwards. So I always use my rear view vision to understand the going forward. And today we live in what I call bromo-sil technology. Now, it sounds like something you take for a hangover, but in fact stands for broadband, mobile, social, and cloud. That's what's transformed our world. And if you think about those 42 years since I graduated that Glenn mentioned, in 1973 I programmed my first computer, which wasn't actually the thing in the top right which I found in HP's archives, but it was exactly like it. You had 16 switches on the front panel. You put in a binary number into those 16 switches. You pressed a button that loaded the first word. You did that 16 times. That set up a bootstrap loader. You put in paper tape. That loaded up the equivalent of today's BIOS, except very rudimentary. And then you could start programming the thing. Now we get to 2015, and we've got each one of us has got in our pocket, in fact, the collective computing power in this room, in our pockets, is equivalent to the global computing power that existed in 1973. And not only that, but we're connected to this massive cloud infrastructure, this huge web of knowledge, information, and processing. That's 42 years. That's an incredible transition. But as I say, I don't think we've seen anything yet, because the next 10 years are going to bring us a change which is going to have a profound effect on absolutely everyone in our economy. And I've put that cyborg up there deliberately, and hopefully you'll understand why when I'm done here. So what happened? When we got this bromo-sil world, we ended up with a new set of business rules, things like the sharing economy and the crowdsourced economy. And you'll notice I've put Bitcoin on the right there, because that's just the tip of what an iceberg that we're about to start seeing. But I won't cover that because there's too much going forward. But let's just take one thing, which is mobile. So if you look at our smartphones today, 10 years ago, none of us had one. We had semi-smartphones, basically email machines. Today, we have these things in our pockets on which we rely more and more, and they're evolving very rapidly. So one of the major applications that's coming up are various forms of proximity solution. And there are a whole lot of technologies that you can use for that, but people have tended to focus on NFC just because of its convenience and because you can build it in easily. When you've got that, you can start changing all sorts of things. And the one that's got everyone interested, which is a bit like the abominable snowman, it's much talked about but never seen, but we're just about there. We're just about there. Mind you, I've said that every year for the last 5 years, and I'm sure Stuart will remind me. But we are just about there. So think of it like this. Today, 300 billion paper coupons are issued in the United States every year. And about a few tens of millions of those are actually redeemed, because people don't have the time to cut them out, organize them, keep them in the wallet, know when to use them. The future looks like you get a coupon in the email, you decide you may want a blue t-shirt at some point, you click add to wallet, and you forget about it. Then you're out about somewhere, and a proximity solution, this time based on a Bluetooth beacon, says, hey, that blue t-shirt you wanted is in the shop you're walking past. You go in, you choose your blue t-shirt, you walk to the front, you take out your mobile phone, you decide which payment instrument you want to use, you choose it, and you redeem your coupon, and you tap it on the terminal, and it's all done for you. From then, you've got your discount applied, you've got your credit card is debited, and you've got your loyalty points accredited, and as you walk out, you get an email with the full detailed receipt. So that is the world of mobile wallets. So it looks pretty good. It's very convenient. Why hasn't it happened? Well, it turns out it's a bit like elephants mating. You know, you've got all these huge things trying to get together, and it takes a long time with a lot of huffing and puffing, and the gestation period is endless. So you've got to be in a situation where you can have any phone with any carrier, with any bank, and with any card. And we're miles away from that. I have one phone with one bank, with one card that I can actually create a mobile wallet out of. No one's going to bother with that. Everyone looks at me as though I'm stupid, which I probably am. The other big problem is that when you lose your phone, who are you going to call, us or the bank? And that support issue is a major issue, because if you're going to call us, you've got to make it worth our while to do so, and that business model is actually quite hard to achieve. So the technology's there, the business is not there to support it. But let me move on now to the future, because this is the part where I think things get weird. And I call this infotelligence, which hopefully will become obvious to you. And there are basically three big things going to happen now. And it's all about relationships. So the first thing is our relationship with each other, mediated by technology. The second thing is our relationship with technology. So the last 25 years of the 20th century were the age of the geek. Only we used to know how to use this stuff because humans had to adapt to the technology. The first 25 years of this century are all about technology adapting itself to humans and becoming invisible to humans, so it's totally intuitive. And the third thing is our relationship with the real world, our ability to measure that world, to analyze that world, and to control that world, and to predict its future. So those three relationships are going to define the next 10 years of technology change. So let's start off with that relationship with each other, people to people. So the big word here is immersive communications, because if you're going to have fully immersive communications, you've got to have the full audio-visual spectrum around you, and you've got to have ubiquity. So the ubiquity, it turns out, comes from this very surprising fact that our kids said to the content providers, we don't want broadcast media, we want broadband media. And hence the whole discussion around media-centric broadband, aka NBN in this country. But the notion that you can create broadband that delivers media on demand. So that's an important step. And at the same time, we have the confluence of new screen technology. And between the two of them, you now start getting that ubiquity of immersive communications, because you can create audio-visual communications across the world. But you can go further, because you can now actually start putting wearable devices onto you that give you a much more immersive experience. So on the far right, you've got the Microsoft HoloLens, which is an augmented reality display. And the particular example which they've got there is a father helping his daughter do some plumbing in her flat. She's remote, but he's sitting with his iPad. He can see what she's seeing, and he can draw on the iPad and show her, and she can see in front of her, overlaid on that physical world, what she needs to do, which knobs she needs to turn, and which buttons she needs to press. So that's a very handy way of doing this augmented reality. Of course, on the left, Google tried it with Google Glass. Didn't succeed as a consumer proposition, but is very much an enterprise proposition. And then in the middle, there's a project from the University of Washington, which I love. And in fact, Google bought the whole team. But it's a heads-up display as a contact lens. So you put this thing in your eye. It's a proper optical contact lens. It does all the compensations of your eyesight. But it's also got an LCD display in it. And the cool thing about it is you obviously can't stick a wire into your eye or a battery into your eye. So it scavenges RF power out of the atmosphere and actually powers itself that way. But we can go even further. We can almost do the beam me up Scotty thing now, because people are working on 360-degree cameras. So the thing on the top left is actually a Samsung 360-degree camera. It's fully stereoscopic, so it's 3D. And you can then transmit that to a virtual reality headset, which the thing on the right is an Oculus Rift. And that then enables you to actually walk around an immersive environment as though you're there. So literally you can, by having someone plonk this 360-degree camera in a position, you can actually walk around that environment and experience it. So as I say, not quite teleportation, but getting there. So the second big relationship is our relationship with technology. And the first thing you've got to notice is something very strange and significant happened with voice recognition in the last 5 years. And I'll come back to that curve, because you'll notice in 2010, voice recognition was plodding along at unusable rates, around about 60, 70% recognition, which no one will tolerate. And suddenly in 2010, it kicked up. And it's now, in 2015, almost better than human recognition, and it's about to sail past our human capabilities. So we're increasingly talking to the environment. But thanks to Microsoft and Kinect, we're also gesturing at the environment. And then there's the third thing which is coming like gangbusters, which is truly weird and wonderful. I'll come back to it in a moment, but a brain-machine interface. So you can talk to your home. I don't know, has anyone here got an Amazon Echo? One person. Do you like it? Good, because I've just ordered one for my wife, because I actually think it's, She wanted a Sonos system, and I know she won't be able to use it, but this thing she can talk to and tell it to do what she needs. So play the BBC, play the ABC, play to the particular song. So you literally can now talk to your house, not the trees perhaps, but the house will at least respond to you.
Shopping will become more social, more interactive, more engaging. In fact, the whole way that we transact will be revolutionized.
So when you start putting these technology experiences together, you get something that looks like that. Now, that particular thing was a marketing mock-up that we did. In fact, we did try the technology because, as you can see by looking at me, I hate clothes shopping. So I figured that this was the right answer for people like me. I just would never go to a store again. But in fact, it doesn't work today, but it will. And you know, the interesting thing about that, there's no way in the world, I can tell you, extrapolating from personal experience, that she's going to drag that guy along to give her an answer about what she's looking at on the clothes, because he's going to do what I say. Yeah, you look great. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's a sack or a Chanel dress. It's all the same as far as I'm concerned. You look great is the answer. So she's going to do that socially with her friends, the people who can give her real advice. But that ability to actually do style and size fit on clothes will transform clothes shopping. And that means that, you know, the whole direct from designer to customer will start to take place. Now, the brain interface is something truly weird and wonderful. So people are working on bionic eyes. One method to do it is to actually take a camera and tap its signal into the optic nerve. But there's a group at Monash University, and this guy spoke recently and got me all inspired, Professor Jeffrey Rosenfeld, who talked about the fact that they're putting a chip into the visual cortex of the brain. And it turns out that you can actually put chips into the visual cortex, and the brain will attach itself to these chips, and you can start measuring and influencing brain waves. So there's an experiment where they took a rat, they stuck him in a cage, they gave him 2 levers and a light. And when the light goes on, he has to choose the correct lever. If he chooses the correct lever, he gets a reward. They then attached his brain to one of these chips, sent it through a computer across the world to another rat in a similar cage, except there was no light in it. There were the 2 levers. And the guy with the light would press the lever, and the guy without the light would press the same lever. So they had literally connected these things' brains together. Now that starts to get truly interesting, because you can actually start doing augmented intelligence, and that just takes us into realms that are undreamed of. The third area, as I said, is being able to interact with the real world. So it turns out we can do all sorts of measurements, and I won't go into detail about this because I haven't got time, but you can actually get sensors now that you can attach to just about anything you can think of. And once you've got those sensors, combined with all the human information that we're producing, you have abundant data. So you take abundant computing in the cloud, abundant data, and you apply it to big data technologies, and then you have the ability to do new analytics, new forms of analytics, of which the most interesting is machine learning, because machine learning is exactly like human learning. You have no idea what the causal relationships are, but you feed it a whole lot of data, and it says, yes, I recognize this data, and therefore I predict the outcome will be that. So people are now starting to, this is an exploding field. So you take all the data in the machine learning, and then you can apply it to things like speech recognition. So in 2010, Google applied machine learning to speech recognition. And that's why that curve ticked up like that. But there's some even more interesting things going on. Like IBM have got a machine they call Watson, which is, they call it cognitive computing because it's not entirely machine learning. It combines a number of AI technologies. But Watson has been sent to medical school. It's literally doing the same course at the Cleveland Clinic that a human student is doing. The difference between Watson and a human is that every year there are 250,000 journal publications in medicine. A human being can absorb about 300 journal publications per year maximum. Watson can absorb all 250,000. Now, IBM are very careful to position it as giving advice to the human doctor and that it's not replacing the human doctor, but it's not going to take long when you want a diagnosis before you're going to go and ask Watson and forget about the human doctor, because Watson's going to be far more reliable and accurate. So that is changing and coming very fast. Now, if you can do that, think what you can do for customer service. So there's going to be an arms race for customer service for the people who are going to produce, who have the best data to produce the best outcomes for the customer who calls in. when you combine that all together. Now, if you're going to do that, you've also got to be able to do it at scale in real time. And that means you need new computing architectures. And I wish I had time to go into this, because the quantum computing stuff is truly magnificent. It's the next wave of the future, and it just so happens that the University of New South Wales is a world leader in this technology. So who knows, Australia may own the next generation of technology. But of course, we're thinking of it in terms of when we offer cloud services, that's what our customers are going to be asking for. So we've got to be able to provide these new computer architectures, which require a whole different way of operating, by the way. So let me end off with my last few minutes with just a couple of examples of how the economy can be digitized in this new world. If we take transport, I love this example because in 2004, the academic opinion was that you can't create a self-driving car. By 2012, Google had not only created one, but had driven over 1 million kilometers without incident. So everyone now knows you can create self-driving cars. Every car manufacturer is actually starting to build self-driving cars. They're introducing them incrementally. But there is no reason why by 2030 every car should not be self-driving. So we're going to have to change human behavior a bit because you really got to trust the technology. But the payoffs are enormous because 90% of road deaths are human error. 1,200 people a year die on our roads. We could save 1,000 lives per year and 45,000 hospitalization injuries. I won't go through the curve on the right, but that's just some work that we did which actually shows that when you introduce this technology, instead of having to increase our road capacity for our burgeoning population, we can actually reduce our road capacity. And that's going to have a huge impact all over the place. There are just many things that will do it. Second point I want to make is once we've got networks and solar plus battery, we can digitize power. Now, that curve is really interesting because if you look at the top right, by the end of the decade, it'll be cheaper to produce a kilowatt hour with solar plus battery, that's including the battery, than it will be with coal. So if you've got coal shares, my advice is get out of them soon because there is no future in that. And again, I think by 2030, there's no reason why every house in Australia shouldn't be off-grid. The technology curve is just taking us in that direction, purely from a cost and effectiveness point of view. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the digitization of people. This absolutely fascinates me. There's a thing called a RoboCup World Challenge, where it's not to produce little robotic machines playing soccer. It's to produce a team of robots that challenges the world soccer champions, the human world soccer champions, and beats them by 2050. Now, if you can do that, you can do all sorts of things. If just think of healthcare, for example. If you've got a robot that's capable, we can replace a whole lot of unpleasant jobs in the healthcare industry with robots, which will make a huge difference to the future of our aging population.